writers do, musical theater writers do, is they spend their lives looking for material. So basically, I was reading stuff, looking for something that might make a musical.
Mm. How did you then make a connection between the Snow Queen and the 1960s in America?
Well, in the Snow Queen, Kai gets this little bit of a mirror falls in his eye, and as a result, he starts looking at things very cynically. And then he follows the Snow Queen and totally loses track with reality. And all of that just reminded me of somebody starting to do drugs, which changed the way they looked at things, and then getting farther and farther out of life. So it seemed like, and also the term snow is a term for cocaine, so I thought, wouldn't that be interesting if the boy disappears from the girl's life because of drugs?
And so the one line that is in the musical that is shared with the source material is when Julia says, "No more kisses or I shall kiss you to death." Mm-hmm. Was that a conscious decision to only put one piece of source dialogue into the musical?
Yeah, it's sort of the only line that stood out as interesting enough. And if you notice, it's in a hallucination. She doesn't say it when she's really Julia, but in his mind she comes in and says that. And yeah, I wanted there to be a few little references for people who know the Snow Queen, but I also wanted it to work fine if you don't know the Snow Queen.
And before we leave the source material, the Raven in the source material is a pretty small character.
He's a very small.
And he's
actually a crow.
That's a crow, right?
And I forgot that. I read it and I thought, oh, the crow's he helps her to find one step of the way. And for some reason in my mind it switched over to Raven, and I thought, oh, I'll make him a character. And yes, you're right. He got much bigger. He took over the story really.
And so moving to the music. One of the biggest challenges in musicals is creating your own musical universe. And you are constrained and also set free in a way by the fact that it takes place in 1969 in America. Mm-hmm. So you have a certain palette. So I guess my question is, how did you deal with having that limitation?
Well, when I first started working on it, I think the first 4 songs that I wrote were really solidly, I felt like I really hit that sound. And then when I got to about 10, 12 songs, I began to feel like I got to put a little variety in. And then there were getting to be moments that required other things. So I guess I first started really imitating the sound, and then I started expanding it a little. And there are still a couple of songs that maybe aren't quite of the world, but there's definitely some 1980s in a couple of songs.
That was my next question is, was there ever a moment on both sides of the spectrum, was there ever a moment when you thought, this is too 60s, or this is too contemporary?
I think there's something that's a little too, the beginning of a song called Things Just Happen. That's sort of 1980s punk rock.
I didn't do this on purpose, Mom. I didn't wake up one morning saying, what can I...
But it's a very angry moment, and I like the fight, so I decided to not be, all that strict about the sound.
But there was nothing you wrote that you thought, it's too Joni Mitchell. I've got to stretch it out.
Specifically Joni Mitchell, I wish that I could write anything on the level of Joni Mitchell's complexity. But to answer your question, I've written about twice as many songs as are currently in the show. So there are a lot of songs that got thrown out for a lot of different reasons.
The rules are for fools who need some liberation. Don't tell me what you want to see now. Don't tell me who I gotta be now. Don't tell me how I gotta sing now. Don't tell me anything now. Rules are for fools. And my sweet little mama...
But mostly they get thrown out for dramatic reasons, not musically. It's mostly just realizing this is not the right song for this moment, or I've already said this earlier on.
So a lot of pieces you can look at, and you can take a pretty good guess at what was the first thing written. If it's a play, you turn the page, you find the biggest monologue you can find in the play, and that's probably the first thing that was written.
Oh.
But I've tried my hardest, and for the life of me, I don't think I can figure out what was the first thing put on paper on snow.
Really, you don't even have a guess?
You know, I cheated here for a minute because I think Brett told me that the idea maybe originally was that it could be a Julie Winter album. And so I think, I don't know, is it Lost in the Snow?
It's Lost
It
in
is
the
Lost
Snow.
in the Snow.
And Lost in the Snow was originally the opening number of the show.
Right.
Oh, love, he came to me like a baby boy. He was soft and warm, and there was too much joy. Like too much wine to drink till the bottle ran dry. And I held him in my arms so he would not cry. I never felt so scared or so happy before. But with everything he gave me, I wanted more.
In the original version, she's standing and singing that song, and it still may end up going back to the beginning. But what I felt was that it may be, the more I wrote the show, the more I realized what she's thinking about at that point in the action is the baby to come. And she's not necessarily still mooning about the man who got away.
Right.
And I also decided to do a different kind of, originally there was a real flashback structure. It literally started on Christmas Eve 1969 and then went back to Christmas Eve 1968. And I decided to a little bit de-emphasize that. And I moved Lost in the
Pretty
Snow.
girl in the park, you look sad to me. I don't know your history, don't even know your name.